Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the One Talk podcast. You're here with your host, Ryan McCarthy. And today we are joined by Ben Lowe. Ben is a man who's overcome incredible changes to transform his life and now dedicates himself to supporting and empowering other men. And within today's episode, Ben shares his powerful story from struggling with addiction, mental health issues, and the life of crime to finding his purpose, self-worth, and a deep connection with his faith. Ben talks about the pivotal moments that led him to change the trajectory of his life and how he's now using his experience to make a difference through initiatives like the Inner Change Project. And this conversation is raw, vulnerable, and incredibly inspiring. Ben's journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the profound impact we can have when we choose to face our demons and step into our true potential. And Ben is also starting up a charity which is going to be supporting the youth, especially with crime. And we're going deep into the charity that he's starting and everything that it is about. And within today's episode, we also touch on youth crime because we know it's a subject that is very hot at the moment, especially here in Australia. And I want to give some context around the conversation that we have because some people may feel like we are making excuses or anything like that. But what we are doing within today's episode when we touch on youth crime is to give an understanding of the potential purposes behind it, because if we have more understanding and more awareness, then we can get more supports in place, and then we feel like this is a great way to prevent it in the future with the next generations coming. So we touch a lot on the awareness around youth crime, but also within Ben's story as well. In other news, on every month on the One Talk podcast, we feature a new GoFundMe to be featured on the One Talk podcast to be able to bring more awareness to someone in need and to help that person. And for November, we have a lady named Kalani. She was rushed to hospital in October after suffering multiple seizures, and she was also induced into a coma, which she is now out of. Kalani is in recovery and needing support with expenses to be able to focus on recovery and get back to wellness. So let's support Kalani in her journey to wellness. I'll leave a link in the bio of this episode so you can check out the GoFundMe. Please support, please share the message, donate whatever you can do to help Kalani on their journey. And one more thing, if you can leave this podcast a rating, it means so much in terms of helping this podcast grow and reaching a larger audience. So if you're on Spotify or Apple, if you can leave a rating, if you're on YouTube, if you could subscribe, it would mean so much. But without further ado, let's welcome Ben.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. The marathon continue. Victory lap tonight, though. Victory lap tonight.
Welcome to the One Talk podcast with Ryan McCarthy.
The marathon continues. That's what you would say.
Welcome to the One Talk podcast. Ben, how you doing, brother?
Good, bro. Good. Stoked to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, absolutely likewise. Stoked to absolutely have you here. Ever since we had that link up through Luke and having that phone call that we had and talking about the work that we've done, but also some of the challenges we both overcome to get to where we are now, it made me pumped just to be able to sit down and have this chat, brother. So keen as.
Yeah, it's definitely it's cool when you got someone that's got that little bit of relatability, because unless you've been there, you don't really understand it, right? And it's awesome even now being on the other side of it that we can both obviously have this platform where you've got your platform, I've got my platform to be able to help people with the things that we were once going through, bro, you know?
Yeah, that's it, brother. And just being able to reflect on some of the things we've done and thinking, all right, well, maybe I could have done this different. Maybe I can use that as wisdom to share to someone else to hopefully help them go on a different path that we may have followed.
Yeah, 100, bro. 100.
Yeah. So to start this podcast, man, you've got a really inspiring story to what you've come from to where you've come to now. The love for yourself, just in your own words, man, could you take us back to the early days of your life and really set up for what happened in your following years when you started to get into crowds and addiction and all those type of things?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, man. I guess my story is a little bit of a unique one, especially with, I guess, coming from like quite heavy addiction in a life of crime. Like a lot of these guys that are going through that, they obviously got born into it, man. Like for me, it was very different. From the outside looking in, brother, my childhood was pretty much the perfect childhood. This once again is from the outside looking in. Like, you know, I had one sister who was younger, I had two parents that were together, had quite a nice house, good area, went to good schools, all that sort of stuff, man. But from a very, very young age, very, very young age. And I think where everything really, or not, I know this is where everything came from. I never felt as though I fit in, right? From a very young age, my whole family, my whole friendship group, everyone like that, brother, I just felt like there was something different about me and that no matter what I did, I couldn't connect with other people, right? And so from a very young age, like I can remember to as young as 13, feeling like an outcast, just feeling like I wasn't the same as everyone else. Yeah. And I mean, like up until about 13 years old, bro, I had the pretty, chill childhood, right? Like obviously we've all got trauma. We've all got trauma, bro. It's one of those things, right? Like it doesn't look like getting sexually, mentally, emotionally, or physically abused to some people, right? But we've all got our trauma. But if I think back to it, bro, the most pivotal point for me as a child was 13 years old, right? Coming from this perfect family, if you like, and I found out my parents were getting divorced. And I remember the specific moment when it took place, right? I was out standing next to the pool at our family home, and my sister and my mum were there. My mum had called us both out there, and she was like, "I have some news to tell you and your sister." I was like, "Okay, what's going on here?" And she's like, "Your dad wants a divorce." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, I tried to sleep with him last night. They'd been sleeping in separate beds, and being 13 years old, like we didn't think anything of that. We're like, oh, mum and dad want to break from one another or some shit, you know what I mean?"
Yeah.
And anyways, she's like, "Yeah, I tried to sleep with your father last night, and he said he wanted a divorce, so we're getting a divorce." And it was at that point in time, I just remember this one moment, right? My sister was like to my mum, she's like, "Why would he do that to us? Why would he abandon us like that?" And the first thing that came out of my mouth was because he doesn't love us anymore. And that became the story. That became the belief that I took on board. And from that very point in time, I pushed all my emotions, all my feelings, everything down because I had to be the man of the house. And I stopped feeling I cut myself off from the world. And it wasn't long after that that I started drinking, right? As an unhealthy coping mechanism that a lot of us pick up, right? We all start drinking at a very young age, or most of us anyway, right?
Yeah.
High school, trying to fit in, trying to be the cool kid. And I
Especially
started
with the drinking
drinking.
culture.
Yeah, exactly right. Especially in Australia, right? And I mean, I was skateboarding a heap. So a heap of the older boys at the skate park would be sinking piss and whatever. And once again, like here's me that had I guess, a lack of identity, a lack of self-worth. And all of a sudden I was drinking and the boys were like, yeah, he's a mad cunt. Look at him. He's fucking on the piss, this and that. And
Mm.
all of a sudden I felt like I fit in.
Yeah, getting that reinforcement like that,
Yeah.
positive feedback from people. Because at that point in your life, it sounds like you're trying to seek community. And then you mix that in with you start to feel like you have to become the man of the house. So you start
Mhm.
seeking environments where you may be around older role models who you may
Yep.
be able to fit in with and find that tribe.
100%, bro. 100%. Like, I think back to it, like, my dad was always there, even from a young age, but he was present, right? So I didn't really have that good male role model. Like, I did in some aspects, but from this point on, he was pretty much gone. So I was like, looking for that male role model anywhere I could. And especially in that scene, like, 13, let's fast forward to 15. I've been drinking pretty much every weekend now for, however long, sneaking out of the house, doing all that sort of stuff. And I remember coming home, I just started smoking pot. I remember coming home and mum gave me an ultimatum. She's like, you either toe the line, right, and you follow my rules, or you can move out. And I mean, if you asked me back then, I played the victim. I was like, oh, my mum kicked me out and that,
Yeah.
fucking poor me, poor me. But brother, they gave me this ultimatum, and I was like, "We'll see you later." And
Mm.
here I was, 15 years old, out in the big bad world all by myself, and coming from quite a good family. Like I didn't really see a lot of the stuff that a lot of the other guys that I was hanging around saw, right? Like I didn't see like the domestic violence, didn't really see like the drugs and alcohol and that side of life as much. And
Mm.
so here I am out on the street and I had to try and make ends meet. So I was like, fuck, what do I do? So I started selling pot. I was like, well, I smoke this shit. Everyone wants this shit. And not only that, like it was easy to get a hold of. It was an easy way for me to make money. So all of a sudden I was like, well, sweet. Okay, this is easy for me. So I started selling pot. And as like a lot of us do, it starts off as that, you know.
Mm.
Fast forward a couple of years, bro,
Definitely.
and got to about 17, 18. I moved back into home for a little bit. Drug business was thriving. Back when I moved out first time, right, 15, I was actually working at McDonald's as my first job. And so I was selling pot out the back door. I'd have like fucking 5, 6 toilet breaks a day. I'd like meet people at the counter because where we were situated in Brisbane, was at Mount Gravatt. So we had like McGregor High and like a lot of the schools around there. All the kids would come across at lunch and be like, yo, like, can you G us on? And I'm like, yeah, sweet. And the managers knew what was going on. So I go out the back door with a fucking, 50 or 25 already weighed up. And I was making money over the counter. You know what I mean? It was mad.
Yeah.
And so I thought I was the fucking man. Here I am. going from having no community, no self-worth to everyone wanted to be around me, right? Because once again,
Exactly.
I had the drugs,
And like
right?
people wanting your attention, people wanting you as
Yeah.
well. And especially being 15 years old and getting that reinforcement that we're at that age where we are trying to mold ourselves into a man. It's a bit confusing too, because it's hard to define a man when you're a boy, but we start
Hey,
doing things to try and define that. And for yourself, that sounds like that was you stepping up. You're getting financials, you're gaining independence, you're running shit on your own. And then I
yeah.
guess that's probably where the switch started to happen for you. Would you agree?
Well, bro, that's definitely where the switch to becoming an entrepreneur did. You
Yeah.
know, starting to run my own business of some sort. But that's exactly right. Like, and I guess you probably experience this as well. Like, and I think a lot of kids do. Like, I look at my son now, he's 6 years old, and I already see him wanting to be so much older. He's trying to skip that childhood. And obviously, being 15, I was like, nah, this is shit. I didn't like that side of my life. So I wanted to become an adult because I looked up to these older men that were, you know, making money, obviously, probably selling drugs and that sort of stuff. And I was like, I want to be more like them. How can I be more like them? And so, like, fast forward from 15, like I was selling pot, moved back into home to 17, and treat my parents like they were fucking idiots, like they had no idea because I'd been out of home for so long. Like, you don't know me, you don't know who I am. Playing that victim, playing that misunderstood card. And yeah, man, not long after moving back in, I got kicked back out because done some dumb drunk shit at a party one night. Once again, you know, just dumb drunk shit, trying to be the man. We're breaking into houses and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, anyways, next thing you know, we had police at my mum and I was not my mum, sorry, at my dad's front door. And so, you know, you can just imagine how he'd respond. He's a full stiff, like a proper stiff,
Yeah.
like just no like inkling into that lifestyle at all. And here I am blazing cones in my room, like selling pot out the family house. And I'm out one
Yeah.
day, I don't know what I was doing, but I get a call from him and he's pissed off and he's like, there's police here looking for you. They pretty much kicked the front door in and my little 4 foot nothing stepmom's home. Only person there, 8 police officers like stormed the house looking for me. This is at, you know, 16, 17. And that was my first real, I guess, run-in with the law.
I've got a quick
And
question for you there, bro. Sorry to cut you off, but
go
because
hard.
I reflect back on myself and around 15, 16, I started selling pot as well and getting into that side of the world. It makes me curious to ask you because I know how I would have reacted or potentially react in that situation. But how was your initial reaction when you found out the cops came to the house because of this type of stuff and considering the mindset you're in? Yeah.
Yeah, fuck the police.
Yeah.
You know, I'm so hard done by, you know, who are they? This and that, right? Like and you know what? There was also the initial, like, I'm a bit of a bad cunt now,
Yeah.
you know?
Like builds
Felt
a bit
like
of
I was a bit of a,
reputation and
yeah, I was a bit of a G, right? And the thing is, they weren't even there looking for pot or nothing like that, bro. They were there looking for stolen property because we'd been out doing breaks and went straight back to the house that we'd been partying at with a heap of stolen gear, and the people that whose house we went to just called the grassy straight on us. And here we were thinking like we were doing mad, like, you know, literally like, you know, breaking into houses, stealing anything that wasn't bolted down, as you do, like back in the day, right?
yeah.
And not that we even edited, it was just dumb shit. I think back to
Yeah.
what we were doing. We're trying to be cool. We're trying to be validated. We're trying to, you know, trying to
Yeah.
fit in once again, because a lot of the older boys we were catching up with and hanging out with down at the skate park were doing the same shit.
Yeah, and it could also be like in a form of like seeking attention as well, whether it's for the people around us or from the law, from our parents, like on a deep subconscious level, like we start acting out and doing these things because
Right?
maybe there's
Right?
something missing or there's a need that's not being
Yeah.
met.
That's exactly right. Like if you're not getting your needs met, mama, you'll find a way to get that attention somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was my first real run with the law, and as you can probably guess, that was the nail in the coffin for one of my old boys' relationships. So I moved back out of home again. Fast forward again to, you know, let's say just before I turned 18. So this is about maybe a year later, just before a year later, and I've been living where I was in Mount Gravatt, and the house I was living in was like a share house, but turns out everyone there smoked pot. So you know, I was just literally sitting at the house, blazing cones all day, playing Modern Warfare 2. Remember them days?
Yeah, that
Modern
was me.
Warfare 2,
Modern
right?
Warfare 3. That was me.
Jamming the Xbox and that, bro. And obviously that was full time now. It's just like selling pot.
Mm.
And I remember going to one of my mates' houses to G on, and I was there with another friend of mine, and I seen them all passing the glass pipe around. And I'd seen it before, didn't really think much of it. And at the time, I'd been experimenting with acid, experimenting with MDMA, all that sort of things. And one of my mates that I was with was like, "Oh, can we have some of that?" And my mate was like, "Have you had it before?" He's like, "Yeah, fucking plenty of times, rah rah." And then he knew that I hadn't. He's like, I was like, "Fuck, can I have some as well?" And he's like, "Are you sure you want this?" And I remember these words clearly, like the words that he said to me. He was like, "Now, are you sure you want this? Because once you do, your life will never be the same."
Mm.
And I can promise you, brother, those words can never be truer. Like I can guarantee. the minute I smoked that pipe for the first time, my life completely changed.
Mm.
And I mean, like, I don't know too much about your history, but did you just get on the pipe as well?
Yeah, I did a couple of times, but for myself as well, when I tried it, it was like this insane feeling. And I knew straight away, like for some reason, my mind switched the other way and said, like when I eventually had to come down and got sober, my mind said to me, if you keep smoking this, like you're going to go down a dark hole. So I was more so addicted to like pills and pot and the
Yeah.
hallucinogenics. But I
Yeah.
did smoke ice and speed a few times. But every time I did it, I just knew where that road could go.
Well, but that's exactly where I went from, man. Because if you had that experience, I'm sure that everyone's had that experience that smoked meth. Funny, I had this conversation on Cooper Chapman's podcast the other day, and he's just like, "By the way, we're not condoning this drug at all, and that's not what I'm doing here." But the first time I smoked it, I was like, "Where can I get more of this? This is the most amazing feeling I've ever had." For someone that struggled with confidence, for someone that struggled with self-worth, I felt 10 feet tall.
Mm.
Every hair on the back of my neck stood up, and like the sex on the like, everything was just everything got better while
Mm.
you run it.
I think that's a good educational piece too, because I don't think we're condoning it or promoting that. What I think we're doing is showing the reason why people get addicted to these
Yeah.
things and build a reliance, and because they give us this good feeling, and especially up until that point, we've been numb for so long, we haven't felt something for so long, and we finally get some sort of feeling that feels good. That's why people get hooked and attached because they haven't got that feeling anywhere else, or they haven't followed a different path that can lead to those same feelings that it can receive.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. And I mean, if I think back to it now, knowing what I know and doing the work that I've done, like all dysfunctional human behavior, whether it be drugs, alcohol, womanizing, gambling, any of that shit, it all comes back to a lack of self-worth. And all of a sudden I felt worthy. But not only that, I had the community, right? And then also on top of that, it's like, well, I could sell this $25 worth of weed, or I could sell this couple of grand worth of ice.
Mm.
And so I changed my game real quick. I went from that to this, and the whole world changed because, as you can imagine, going from dealing with stoners to then dealing with junkies and dealing with people that are hanging out for ice, it was a completely different kettle of fish.
Oh, it's a whole different world.
Whole different world, brother. Whole different world. And like, so that was 18. I had my pipe for the first, I had a pipe for the first time, and it didn't take long before I was a daily user.
Mm.
And so from 18 till 26, or just before I turned, yeah, actually no, 26, I smoked ice every day. Pretty much the only time that I wasn't high was either when I was coming down and sleeping,
Mm.
waiting for more drugs to get dropped off, or while I was locked up. So it wasn't too long after that. So 20 years old, I got locked up for the first time, and I got locked up in that whole time in that career. I got locked up for a total of 4 years. So I got locked up 6 times.
Mm.
I was a slow learner. You could definitely say that. Longest stint being a year and a half, but a lot of these little stints for dumb shit. Like the first time I got locked up was because of it. Once again, like my whole life started to revolve around ice. Like there was nothing else that mattered to me. I was either picking it up, weighing it up, selling it, or smoking it, and that was every day.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the run. Like I'd drive to the Sunshine Coast, I'd drive down to New South Wales, I'd drive to Gold Coast, I'd come back to Brisbane, I'd stop off and do it again and again and again. And I do this for days on end until I literally crash, fall asleep behind the wheel of the car, pull over on the side of the road, and literally sleep for 3 or 4 hours and go again.
Yeah.
And that was the lifestyle, man. And when you're in that lifestyle, nothing else matters. Like I hadn't spoke to my family for God knows how long. And obviously with that, I had a court date that I completely forgot about, had no idea about. And 6 months later, I actually just moved into a new house with my partner at the time and finally put my name on a lease after not being on a lease for a very long time. And this is like, once again, like 20 years old, put my name on a lease. And only a few weeks later, we had the police rock up to our house for a fail to appear to court, And so the
Yeah.
first time I got locked up was for a driving charge and a fail to appear. Like, imagine that walking into and lucky it was the first timer's yard, right? And there's absolute
Yeah.
spastics, bunch of absolute spastics. I'm walking in there, like, what are you up here? What are you in here for? I'm like, oh, I just qualified driving charge. And he's just like, you're a laughing stock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're a laughing stock. Like, you think it's a bad enough pissing contest out here, but you go in there and the conversation, like, have you done time? You done, yeah?
No, I haven't though.
Yeah. Oh, well, the conversation in there, bros, like I had this car, I stole this fucking, I had this mad earn. I was fucking these girls. I was, making this bulk cash. I was snorting this much. I was selling that much. It's a pissing contest. So that all comes down to what you're in there for. And so I remember, like a couple of times after I've been in there for the first, I would have been the third or fourth time. We had that Gold Coast police on, right? And we'd see some of the lads coming through. They've been like obviously on the TV show, and like they were like superheroes. You know what I mean? They were like like people were praising them, like, oh, bro, we seen that police chase, man. That was hectic. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, are you fucking kidding? That's the level of conversation there. So, like, coming in with like a driving charge, I was like almost embarrassed to talk about it. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, I can imagine. And like, especially when you first were getting transported to jail, like what was going through your mind in that moment? Because for some people, it could be nervousness. The next person, it could be fear. The third person, it could be thinking about all the decisions that led them there. What was that experience like for you leading up to going into jail?
brother, I remember being in the watch house, right? In the watch house that I've been in many a times. And I was like talking to the boys. I'm like, yeah, I'll be going home in a few days. Like, rah, rah, rah. I've been here plenty of times, this, that. And they just looked at me. They're like, bro, you're not going home. Are you kidding? You're not going home, bro. You're going to jail. I was like, oh, what? And I think that because I've been fried for so long and absolutely cooked my brain, like when I say that, like I absolutely cooked the thing, right? I was so fried that I was in such a dissociated state that it didn't hit me. And even the first time going to jail, I was like, because the lads I was with, they made it seem like it was mad after being in the watch house for 7 days. Like going from the watch house, you've got like, you're lying on the floor in this communal hall, getting absolute rubbish food. They're like, yeah, the food you're getting there is mad, this and that. And I'm talking to obviously junkies, obviously, they're probably living worse outside than they are in jail.
Mm.
They're making it out to be this mad thing, like it's not even bad. So I wasn't even worried. I was like not even stressed. I'm like, oh, it's all good. And like I remember back now, like back to that, I didn't even know when I was getting out. I was so cooked. I can't even remember what the lawyers or the judges or anyone said. And I was literally sitting in there just waiting to find out what was going on. And one day, like after being in there, I think it was like 4 weeks the first time. They're like, "Oh, you're going home today," and I actually
Yeah.
had no idea. That's how cooked I was.
Mm. Was that your first, I guess, extended period of time without having any sort of substance to use? Like that
Since
4 week
15 years
period?
old. I was also, yeah, well, since 13 years old, apart from obviously drinking on the weekends, from 15 when I was smoking pot, it was the longest I'd been without a drug in, yeah, well, since I could remember.
And
So
how was that
5, 6
experience?
years.
How was that experience for you, man? Because I started drugs when I was 11 years old. I got clean when I was 18. And the first 4 to 6 weeks, especially the first two, like the hardest weeks of
Yeah.
my life. How was that for you?
Um, well, all I can say is I slept a lot. I
Yeah.
was coming down from the pipe, right? But there was this almost uneasiness of not knowing what it was.
Mm.
There's this massive uneasiness of not actually fully understanding who I was. Because for 5, 6 years, I'd only known me who was high on the pipe or high on weed or, taking pills or taking acid and whatever it might have been. And I had this personality that was so, I guess, sorry, no, identity that was so based around that lifestyle
Mm.
that I was, yeah, like I was timid as shit. And it took me back to when I was 13 years old, being, you know, not confident, so lacking confidence, being scared of the world and feeling like I didn't fit in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even in saying that, once again, like that 4 weeks, I think I'd cooked myself so much that that 4 weeks wasn't even a real detox. It wasn't long enough for me to actually come back to feeling somewhat human.
Yeah. Okay.
And like I got out, and like, this is the thing, you think going to jail for the first time, especially how after how bad they make it out to be, right? You think that'd be the turning point. Like at least you pull your head in, I'll pull your head in just a little bit. But for me, it was like I met more people that needed drugs. I met more people to get the drugs cheaper, and I just saw an opportunity.
Yeah.
So I got out of jail that first time and went hard, harder than ever.
Mm.
And it wasn't long before I was driving around stolen cars and moving bulk quantities compared to what I was moving previously, and just networking now with some real crimps, some
Yeah.
people that were, this is their career, this is what they do all the time, whereas I just dipped my toe in the ocean and now it's like I've really just jumped full the way in.
Yeah. Okay. So you jumped in the deep end and you realize you can float. So you kind of just stayed around.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like from there on out for the next 6 years, I was just in and out of jail, and I've had all sorts of experiences there, like got robbed at gunpoint, all sorts of stuff happened, like had been jumped, bashed multiple times over like drug debts or obviously people wanting the drugs that you got, and I never saw that side of it with weed.
Yeah.
And so it was like a massive wake up call, but I was so cooked that once again I was just like, I'm the man, like I'm all good, thinking I was El Chapo or some shit, bro. But
And
I think back to it, and I had so many moments there where I was like, near death experiences. Like I was in 3 car crashes in 1 week. One of those times, my mate fell asleep at the wheel. I was in the passenger seat. I was asleep already with the wheel. Oh, sorry, with the seat all the way back with the seatbelt off. We're going like 130 k's down this hill. We hit this embankment because he fell asleep at the wheel. The car ended up flipping end over end, right? It was like an old WRX wagon. And so when I came to, I was like in the back seat, my arm and my leg, my arm and my head were like hanging out the car, right? As the car sort of landed on its tail on the back of the car and sort of dropped onto its wheels. I just remember waking up screaming. And so like the only thing that I got from that was like a scratch on my back from the fabric of the car seat,
Wow.
like a fabrics, like, like a adhesion sort of thing. Like moments like that, driving this little Toyota Camry off this fucking cliff and getting stuck in trees,
Yeah.
like, because I was just once again falling asleep at the wheel. Like this is all happening in the space of a week. There were so many times where I should have carked it, but I didn't, and like once again, being high and whatever, like it just brushed it off like it's nothing.
What do you think about that? Those times you should have cocked it, but didn't. What do you think that was?
Man, I think it's the big man up here looking after me, bro. Honestly, like in the last 6 months, I came to God, but I always knew there was a higher power at work because of all the opportunities that I had where I probably could have died or should have died. There was always someone looking out for me or something looking out for me, man. So, and only upon, I guess, reflection and looking back at that now, I definitely know that like God had a bigger plan,
Mm.
But yeah,
That's
bro,
so interesting because I similar, bro. Like because I've now come into God and I go to church and stuff, and it's only been a recent thing. And I reflect back and I'm thinking, fuck, God must have been with me this whole time, like
yeah, bro,
looking
it's a
after me,
crazy thing to think, right?
Yeah. How was it for you? Like, how did that experience start, or when was, I guess, your first encounters to come to the realization that maybe God has been looking over you?
Man, I guess there was definitely so many moments. And I guess once upon a time, I used to just refer to it as a universe. I knew there was a higher power. But in the last 6 months, bro, it's been a pretty crazy experience. Pretty crazy experience, bro. So, not New Year's, sorry, Christmas Day last year, me and my ex-partner were on our first date. And because you're up in Brisbane, right?
Yeah, up in Brizzy.
Christmas Day, we got hit with that crazy storm. And on the Gold Coast, we got hit with that tornado.
Yeah.
So me and her are having dinner. She just moved over from New Zealand. I was like, "Hey, can I cook you dinner?" sort of thing. And she come around because she got no family over here. My little boy had gone home and I'd done my thing that I needed to do for the day. I was like, "Let's hang out." And we're cooking dinner and we start seeing all this lightning. We're like, what the fuck's that? So we go for a walk and we're like, "Oh, well, let's go check that out. You keen to go for an adventure?" She's like, yeah, for sure, let's do it. And so we went for a drive up Mount Tamborine, which is actually where they got hit the worst.
Yeah.
Right? Like Tamborine got fucking flattened. And we're sitting at the top of Mount Tamborine looking out at this massive storm cloud coming through. And it looked like a tornado. It was like this funnel coming down to the ground. And I was just thinking to myself, we don't get tornadoes in Australia. And we're watching this lightning coming out of this cloud, bro, and hitting the ground. And we're just like, that's hectic. And she starts talking about God because she's a Christian girl. So, and once again, I only recently came to God itself like 2 years ago. She's like, I don't know, started talking about God. And I was like, you know what? Like, it sort of made me think because every time that I go up in the plane, because I skydive now. So every time I go up in the plane and skydive, I look down and I see all these little ants and they're actually people, right?
Yeah.
And it gives me the thought that obviously there's someone higher than us that's up there looking at us as if we're just a little ant farm. We're so insignificant. And all it takes is like a storm or something to come through and we could literally get wiped out.
Yeah.
And as we're saying this storm starts rolling through. And we get hit as we're literally having this conversation by this tornado. Got pinned to the car, like literally couldn't jump out. It was that much wind. It was like 200-kilometer winds. And we jumped out, finally got out, opened the car doors, jumped in the car, and it was like Jumanji hit the car, like literally full of trees and full of leaves and shit. And we're driving down Mount Tamborine. There's like trees falling over. There's like power lines on the road, and it was hectic. We pulled up, and because we got blocked off, and we pulled into like this little embankment where this like business was. And we started having a conversation. Luckily, she's good company, by the way. This is our first date. Imagine getting stuck on a mountain for 6 hours with someone who's terrible chat. Like, that'd be like a fucking Chinese torture, mate.
Pinch me to wake up.
Oh, bro, literally, like, no, you can just walk from here, love. You're right. But we're talking about something, and the thing that came up was she was like, if you had to describe it in one word, what's your intention for the next year? And the first thing that popped into my head was faith. She's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you know what? I actually don't know. That's just come to me. But when I think about faith, what I mean is like, I believe in the universe. I believe there's a higher power, but I want to explore that further. I want to look into the Quran. I want to look into reading the Bible more. I want to look into all these different religions like Buddhism and that sort of stuff and see what resonates with me. And I guess that was for me God's way of, I guess, opening my heart, planting his seed so he could water his garden and allow me to sort of grow in faith. And over the next few weeks and next few months, he continued to just work and work and work bit by bit, bit by bit, bit by bit. And I noticed that I started to position and posture myself more towards, I guess, his teachings. And one day she asked me if I wanted to go to church, and she goes to Glow here on the Gold Coast. And I was like, you know what? Yes, I'd love to. And I walked into church for the first time, and I never felt so at home, like at peace.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. I'm cool. I want to explore this a little bit further. But obviously, with my past, there was like so much resistance because for so long I was like the antichrist, if you like, right? I was like Satan's keeping a seat warm for me in hell. Like, fuck God. If there was a God, how is this happening? Blah, blah, blah. I just jumped on the bandwagon with everyone else. I thought I was the baddest and, baddest little critter under the sun. And so there was a massive part of my identity which was still attached to that. And so for me then to go like, okay, cool, I'm committing my life to God, there was so much resistance internally. Like I used to, call Christians God botherers and call them like, people that were too scared of the world. So they have to believe in something because they can't believe in themselves and all sorts of shit, bro. And all these stories that I just picked up from other people that I latched onto and made my own. And yeah, I had this moment where a lad from the church, like I never met him before, and he sort of just pulled me aside as we're leaving one day. Like, brother, I've been watching you the whole time you've been here, and the Lord's got a message for you, and He's telling me to tell you that whatever's going on in your life, I was going through a bit of turbulence with my partner at the time, and there was a couple other things coming up. He's like, whatever's going on in your life, the enemy's trying to pull you back down and get you back into your old ways. But he wants you to know they're fighting for you in heaven. There's angels fighting for you right now, literally fighting for your soul. And I was like, it hit me like an arrow to the heart, and just like, whoa, that's so heavy and resonates with me so hard right now. And so I was like, brother, can I grab your number and can we go for a walk? And can you help me to understand that a little bit further? I went for a walk with him on this Tuesday. That was on Sunday. We went for a walk on Tuesday. And there was a couple of things that he said that just really resonated with me and dropped in. And it was just like, okay. And the one thing that he said was that it doesn't matter what you did in the past. Like if you position yourself and posture yourself towards the Lord, you don't have to try to get forgiveness. It's already been done for you, right? There's this guy called Jesus that died on the cross for you, man. Like he's already taken all your sin. And so you don't need to strive to become that person because of your past. All you have to do is say like, Lord, you are my Lord. And it's already been done for you. And then what will happen is he'll start to, I guess, water the garden in your heart, which will then help you to grow in love for him. And in turn, that'll radiate outwards from inside of you. And as soon as I said, yes, I'm doing this, like I'm going to lean in and I'm letting go of all, I guess, judgment for self because there was so much shame and so much guilt for my past that I didn't feel worthy of this amazing life that I've been promised, right? That we've all been promised. We've all been promised this amazing life, but because of the things that I'd done, I didn't feel worthy of it. But as soon as I said yes, man, my life got so much easier and it just happened so quickly. Like it's just like this snowball effect of all these different things happening. Like I remember being there at church like a couple of weeks later worshiping and a couple of months prior I'd taken ayahuasca, sat with ayahuasca and had a really cool experience. And it was the first time I actually experienced pure love for myself, like pure infatuation. And I had that exact same experience in church worshiping and just felt this overwhelming presence of the Lord. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like this is hectic. And it gave me this realization that I'd been chasing so many feelings in my life. And I'd had the drugs, I had the women, I had the girls, I'd had the money, I'd had like everything you'd ever want, right? As far as it goes, even though I'd got it in the wrong way. I had all these things. And as much as I chased those things that I thought would make me happy, I never felt complete. Yet here I was, and this is like a couple of months ago, where I was actually in the most difficult financial place I've been in a very long time. I was in the most difficult place emotionally I've been in a long time, been in the most difficult place with business I've been in a long time. Yet here I was in church and I walked away from that church knowing that the only thing that I'd been missing my entire life that I kept seeking after was that was God. Like that was the missing piece. And when I had that realization and realized that it was, through him that I can have this wholeness, it completely changed things for me, brother. And then from there, everything just fucking blew up. You know what I mean? So you don't experience that, bro. Like it made my life so much easier. So that was a very recent journey, but going through that whole thing that I went through with the previous, I guess, like the drugs and all that side of things, I was always seeking something, right? It was always coming back to that lack of self-worth. And I mean, thinking back now, It's like, what did I actually enjoy? I wasn't even addicted to the drugs. I wasn't even addicted to the money. I was addicted to the power that came with them. I was addicted to the feeling of being important to people, right? Even though it was like very fair with the friends sort of style, like when the drugs and the money are there, everyone's there. As soon as you go to jail, where's everyone to be seen, you know?
Exactly. That's powerful, brother. Like just hearing that testimony just there as well. And it shows how evident it is that God's working in your life right now to help people who were in the similar path to you. So you can help them on that journey of overcoming challenges or pushing through to the other side and having someone there to be by their side, brother. And maybe that's why you came so close to death so many times with car crashes and survived. So you can get to this point now to give back and help people.
Hey man, brother, I think that we go through what well, we can either go through what we go through, or we can grow through what we go through, right?
Mm.
And if I hadn't have grown through it and actually taken it for what it is now, I wouldn't be able to then support these men that I'm working with to help the men that I'm working with. And for that, I am actually grateful every day for the hardship that I went through, because at the end of the day, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now.
Mm.
So there's not one part of me that doesn't think that this wasn't part of the big man's plan, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of people ask me with my story, do I have loads of regrets or loads of shame and guilt attached to maybe some of the things I've done in the past? But I always say no. Like I'm always grateful for everything that I've experienced because it serves a purpose now. Because I'm
Yeah.
not the only person to ever do that certain thing. I'm not the only person to ever sell drugs or steal shit and do all that stuff, you know. Like I can't hold guilt and shame around those things. Instead, just use the wisdom to help other people and relate with them.
That's it. I guess like that's the thing. Like, I don't know if you feel the same. I'm sure you would, bro, but it's almost like you feel obligated to use what you've gone through now, because for me, it's like I took so much away once upon a time. I was taking away from the community, but now I've got the power to give that back.
Mm.
And so it's like my way of almost righting my wrongs, you know,
Yeah.
to some degree. It's like a way of reconciling the past.
Mm.
And like, I guess once you can do that, it allows you to let go of that shame and guilt, because shame can only live there if you don't shine a light on it. As soon as you
Yeah.
shine a light on it and go, hey, this is me and who I am, like
Yeah.
you no longer hold that shame, because shame just comes from a fear of judgment, right? But no one can judge you for something that you've already called out for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's the powerful thing as well about sharing your story because you start to normalize your own journey, your own story, which then you start having less negative emotion attached to it.
Yeah.
Good thing.
Yeah, you stop demonizing the story, and obviously then it becomes like empowering to some degree. And I mean, like, I'd love to ask you around that. Like with your story, was that something you struggled with at first as well? Was to like actually share that and be so open and be so vulnerable around it?
Yeah, definitely. Because when I first started One Talk, it used to be branded under a different name. So everything used to be called Mental Health Experience. That was the name of my Instagram and the work that I did. And that was back in 2018. But when I first created the page to start spreading awareness around mental health and tell people overcome addiction and all that type of stuff, I was absolutely shitting myself that the people around me were going to judge me for opening up because on the outside looking in, I didn't look like someone that was struggling. I was going to the pub, I was catching up with people, I was the guess like the person who made everyone laugh when all the boys are around, like no one really
Yeah.
saw me as someone that would struggle. But people didn't know that when my friend would come to my house, I'd be shaking in my room with anxiety and couldn't get out of bed. I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck, what's it going to be like sharing this? But then once I opened up, I felt like that weight came off my shoulders. And then from there on out, it's just like deloading all the weight. And now I feel
Yeah.
like I'm weightless.
It's a crazy experience, right? Because I hid that for so long. And I've actually got a event that I'm talking at very soon for a good friend of mine and an old coach of mine, Tamara Myers, talking about branding. And so for so long, I hid my story. And I was a PT, like I got out of jail for the last time. I started to become a personal trainer. And literally to finish my PT course, because I got told by the gym that I was training at, who they wanted to hire me. They're like, hey, if you finish your course, we'll give you a job. Bro, I had like a full certificate. So I did my cert 3 and I still had to finish my cert 4, which is like, I don't know, 8 or 12 modules.
Mm.
And I was like, there's no way I'm getting through this. I was literally smoking meth and just staying up for like 3, 4 days at a time, getting through this coursework, studying to be a PT, you know what I mean? And then here I am training people, right? Trying to preach health and fitness and going out, not even going out, going home and hanging around a fucking crack house from like Friday through till Sunday, still being on parole at the time, obviously with my previous experiences, and then having to like, flush my piss in case I got piss tested. This is my life, right? And then I'm trying to tell people about health and fitness.
Mm.
And I wondered why my business wasn't taking off. There's such a lack of authenticity there. It's like, do what I say, not what I do. And if you found out anything about me, I was like, if these people find out about me, I'm never going to be successful.
Yeah. So
Right?
you don't want to be quote unquote exposed type thing.
That's it. And so that would stop me from then connecting with people because I'm like, what if they know? What if they find out?
Mm.
And talk about a failing business model. As a PT, you've got to be so social.
Yeah.
I was like the massive wall there. Like there is no chance I'm opening up to these people. And then like it sort of all came to a boil a little bit after that. So I've been a PT probably for about a year and a half, 2 years. And I was still just keeping everything suppressed, not really telling anyone about my story, still partying every weekend. I'd broken up with my kid's mum, found out she was pregnant. She was caught up in that lifestyle. I knew that if I didn't get away, that I'd never probably be able to get away. So I left her while she was pregnant. And then, man, I was a piece of shit. Like I left her for another woman
Yeah.
because I didn't know how to be alone. But I knew that if I didn't get out of that environment, nothing would ever change. Right? I'd probably still be doing the same shit.
Well, if nothing
Um,
changes, nothing changes.
that's it, bro. So I left her while she was pregnant, and that was like another thing I held so much shame and guilt around. I'm like, what if people find out about that? So what I do every weekend, I just write myself off. You know, clients will be at the gym waiting 6 a.m. on a Monday morning, and I'm still asleep in some random's bed or doing laps back and forth to the microwave because I got off the pipe. Like I'll put that down. That was sweet, but then I just got straight on the coke and started using, cocaine, alcohol, and women as a coping mechanism.
Yeah, just
And so
transition to something else.
oh, yeah, that's it. Exactly right. And like, how many times do we see that? Like, I'm sure that you've seen it with the work that you do. It's like someone goes from, and it could even just go from the drugs then to doing like health, right? And it's like it's a good transition, but you're still running away from something. You're using that as a coping mechanism to some degree,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
It's like whatever the intention is behind it. When you get clear on the intention, it sort of changes things. But I had this point. I was about 2 years in my PT career. Just started actually making really good money. Just started seeing a really nice girl. And yeah, I got raided. My house got raided, bro. I was like, I haven't done anything in fuck knows how long. I'm like, what's going on here? And it was over an armed robbery, right? So a guy owed me money 2 years prior. We went in, ran on his house, and didn't even know at the time, but he had a camera in his house, and so he'd taken still shots from the camera, painting us out to be these real bad cunts, right?
Oh.
And
And it took
what
him two
happened
years
is,
to build a case or something.
no, well, what happened is we took a bike, so that he didn't have the money that he owed, and so we took his bike. That bike got used in a high speed.
Oh,
And so it still had the same plates on it. So old mate, obviously the cops rocked up to his house, reported it 2 years after the fact or a year after the fact, however long it was. And they didn't have the full video. They just had these images. And all you see is I've got a cast on at the time. And I'm in there belting old mate with a fucking cast on, which does not look good to start with. And obviously that's all you see, right? So they've come there looking for me and get hit with this armed robbery. And it was like, fuck, like I've tried to get away from this lifestyle. It's come creeping back in. And there's no way that I can't, I guess, go public with my story to some degree, especially within my workplace, because there's a chance that the police are going to rock up there.
mm.
And so I'm shitting myself, man, because every time in the past that because they call me, the police call me, they're like, private number. And I knew straight away, I was at the gym training. They're like, mate, we've just executed a search warrant on your house looking for X, Y, and Z around an armed robbery. I had no idea what they were talking about.
Mm.
They're like, you need to come and have a conversation with us. And I was like, well, I've got nothing to worry about. Sweet, I'll do that. And anyways, the girl that I was seeing, me and her had gone to Brisbane the next day. And then on the way back, she was going to drop me at the cop shop and wait for me.
Mm.
So I go in there and they've just put the fucking brief on the desk. They're like, we're here to talk about this, 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 and this. And I'm like, no idea what you're talking about. They just opened the brief and there's literally fucking 3 photos of me bashing old mate clear as day in his
Right.
house. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm humped. No comment, no comment, no comment. Let's get out of here.
Mm.
And I'm thinking I'm fucked here, I'm fucked. And it's the first time that I've gone into a police interview room and walked away with bail
Yeah,
because
well.
of my previous, obviously, skipping court and all that sort of shit.
Mm.
I was like, there's no way that I'm getting out of here. And so I had this like fork in the road. And it's like I either go back to doing what I always did, which was go on the run and run the ball up because I'm going back to jail. And they're like, man, armed robbery. I spoke to my lawyer. He's like, bro, you're looking at like 5 to 8 years, right? With your history, you got like fucking 12 pages of criminal history at this point. Yeah. He's like, you're going to jail if you don't fight this. Or the other side was I go fucking hard on business and build myself up because on the off chance I don't go to jail, imagine wasting all that time and not working on myself during that time, right? And so I was like, right, well, I'm gonna follow this road. I'm actually gonna go 100% all in on myself. And so I went into work the next day and I was like to my fitness director at the time, I'm like, bro, who's like the guy who sort of runs all the PTs at the gym. I'm like, I've got to let you know something. I'm like, there's a good chance that, I might get taken one day by police. And he's like, why is that? And I just gave him the rundown. And here I am shitting myself, walking into this PT office going, there's no chance I'm going to have a job after this.
Mm.
Right. And lucky this guy, his name's Jan Pierce, absolute legend, completely shifted my perspective on what people would ever think, right? Because he showed me compassion and showed me empathy.
Yeah.
And instead of going, you piece of shit, how could you do that? He's like, well, I didn't know that about you, but how can we support?
Mm.
That's not who you are anymore. I've seen the changes that you've made, and I see how much of a good man you're trying to become.
What did that mean to you in that moment?
Man, in that moment, that was everything. That completely took away the armor that I had, that protection that I had around myself, the mask that I was wearing, and allowed me to actually have the power to put that mask down and go, this is me. And that's, I guess, that was a real turning point for me in sharing my story, because I shared it with this guy who was, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, stiff, full stiff. There's no chance that he'd ever get caught up in that kind of world, right? And so
Do you feel like that was the permission slip you've always been like unconsciously looking for?
that was the approval.
Mm.
You're enough. It doesn't matter what you've done, doesn't matter where you've come from. And to me, I actually now see that as being real, I guess, godly behavior.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what you did in the past.
Yeah.
All that matters is who you are now. And I'm here to support you with that. And so from there, I started sharing a bit of my story online. And once again, like, it was the scariest thing I ever did, right? Scariest thing I ever did.
Mm.
Started sharing a little bit of my stuff online. And I don't know if you've seen the post on my Instagram page. It's like my second pinned post. It's like me jacked, and then me as
Yeah.
like a crackhead. And it's like, I was once a crackhead,
Mm.
right? And I shared that, and the feedback that I got was just mind blowing. Instead of being pushed away and outcast and exiled like I thought I would be, I was welcomed with open arms.
I saw it too. There's like over 500 comments of just people supporting.
Nah, I wouldn't go that far, bro. I wouldn't go that far. Go back through them, man. Go back through them and have a look. There's a lot of people. I put it up as a boosted post. That was one of the ones I used for marketing for a very long time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And there's a lot of comments on there like saying, "What's the difference now? You're a piece of shit." And I was just like, "Cool, good chat," you know. But
Yeah.
also at the end of the day, when that went up, it didn't affect me in a negative manner, you
Mm.
know. Whereas once upon a time, if I put that up, I would have like closed off and gone in my shell.
It's because you had
But
more certainty on who you were.
that's right, man. It was a big part of it. Like this is all part of the journey, right? And I think that, like, even if I can add this in here, like, for anyone out there that holds shame and guilt, no matter what you've done, no matter what you do, as long as you're working on becoming a better version of you,
Mm.
the shame and the guilt can only hold power over you if you continue to hold that back from actually being public, right? Like, when you share publicly the things that you've done, obviously, like, within reason and with the right people, it actually allows you to lift that weight that you have. Because as soon as I had that post, as soon as I posted that post and get that out in public, it was literally like my heart just got lighter. Everything got lighter. My life just got easier. And all of a sudden, that authenticity piece that I struggled with for so long, whereas this failing business model of me being a PT that, was preaching health and fitness, but was a crackhead on the weekends and, snorting coke every weekend, to then becoming like this guy. It's like, hey, this is who I am. It's like the road from there just unfolded for me. I stopped PTing. I lent into the personal development side of things and started helping men. Actually, I was working with women as well at one point in time. But the thing that was, like, I guess, the standout moment for me was like this relatability piece. Because I mean, I've been to psychologists and counselors and all that sort of stuff in the past and never really connected with them.
Yeah.
But for 6 years, I worked on myself from, like, 26 through to 32 now. And this is where I am now. Like, I'm a person that can actually say, like, I'm proud of the man that I am. I can sit here and talk comfortably about my story with no shame, no guilt. And that's not something that happens overnight. But you go to psychologists, you go to counselors. Like, I think of my mum, for instance, she's been going to the same psychologist for the last 20 years.
Mm.
And all they're doing is re-traumatizing her and validating her behavior.
Yeah, it's you gotta find someone that clicks with you and works for you, and that's for me. Like I went to a psychologist twice, and it wasn't for me. I needed someone that could relate with me. But
Yeah.
also, it makes me curious, man, to hear you say that's a moment you had that feeling of being proud of yourself. If you could go back to 15-year-old Ben and knowing that feeling of being proud of yourself, what do you think that would have meant to him?
Everything.
Mm.
I was seeking approval externally to myself from everyone, from my dad, from my mum, from my family. And so, like, just for someone to say, hey, I'm proud of you.
Mm.
But, like, once again, like, now doing the work that I've done and realizing, like, what needs to happen, like, it doesn't matter if anyone gives you that approval unless you give that approval to yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I was to be able to go back and say that to myself, like, hey, you're going to do these amazing things and you should be so proud of yourself for the man that you become.
Mm.
Whether it would have changed my trajectory and, like, whether I would have wanted it to change my trajectory, probably not. But Because like I'm fucking so stoked with where I'm at and what I do on a daily basis. Like I'm not making millions of dollars, but I'm changing fucking lives every day, bro. And that to me is worth more than any money, you
Definitely.
know? Um,
Priceless.
Priceless, 100%, brother. And if I could go back and say that to myself, I definitely feel it would have made the road a lot easier,
Mm.
you know? I
Yeah.
would have I would have probably looked a lot more within rather than looking outwards.
Mm. So looking at the things within yourself that you could maybe be proud of yourself about, just even the
Yeah.
little things.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? We always look for these big, extravagant things for us to feel approval or feel validation, right? Like buy the house or, save $1 million or have, a business doing X amount of revenue. It doesn't matter how many times you do that. It's always more and more and more until you find that within yourself and realize that you never be happy with anything if you're not happy with what you've got right now.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely spot on. It also makes me curious as well around the whole. Was there a point in your life, maybe when you got clean or maybe when you were still using, where you were able to start rationalizing a lot more? Because I know when you're in the depths of addiction, it's very hard to rationalize when you've got something that you feel like you need instead of the rationalization. But do you remember like a certain moment when you was able to sort of rationalize and start thinking of maybe different avenues or different options or thinking of multiple choices to maybe take a different path in life?
When you say rationalizing, like different ways to like, obviously like find that success and find that like, that path in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. So like an example would be when you said you went back to the police about that thing that happened 2 years prior, and then you started to rationalize or run away, or maybe do I work on myself and work on my business and open up about this type of stuff?
Yeah, there was definitely like I guess the real turning point for like rationalization, obviously looking at myself to stop avoiding
Mm.
would have been, was I 30? 2022, right? Because at this point in time, I was still partying every weekend, still writing myself off, still doing all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
And I remember waking up on the 2nd of January with a black eye after punching on with my housemate. I crashed my car into the front fence of my house. Brand new car, by the way. I lost my license at 16 for driving on disqualified. Got my license at 27 or 28. Would have been 29 actually. So I got my license at 29. And so it's like 12 years or something. Wow, crazy. Anyways, so I woke up, yeah, with black eye, crashed my car in the front fence of my house, and made an absolute dick of myself at probably the nicest house I'd ever been in at a house party the night before. And all I remember is like jumping on this dude's brand new white couches, just being absolutely off tap, just like 2 days old, like obviously typical New Year's bender type thing.
Mm.
And I woke up and I just started recalling all the stuff that had happened the night before. I had a smashed phone. I had like bits of bag in my pocket. I was like wet in clothes that were just absolutely drenched. And I stood there, looked at myself in the mirror, and I was just like, I need to do better.
Mm.
Like, this is not the life I want to live. Because this wasn't a isolated like incident either. This is something that was happening like every couple of weekends. I'd have some sort of blowout where I'd punch on with someone, or I'd make an absolute cunt of myself, or I'd just do some real shameful shit that I'd wake up the next day feeling like a bag of dicks about.
Yeah.
And so that was a real turning point where I was like, I need to do better, and like realizing that that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted any longer.
Mm.
Because long term, like at the time, because I was running from something still, obviously that's why I was using drugs and alcohol and obviously womanizing and gambling. It's like I was running away from the discomfort, running away from the thoughts, the feelings and emotions I didn't want to feel.
Yeah.
It was like that point in my life where I was like, something needs to change because I realized at this point in time, I've got a 4-year-old son,
Yeah.
you know, and if I don't show up differently, and I had a relationship with him, but I was never present.
Mm.
And I started seeing that same piece that I had around my dad, where he was never present with me. I started seeing that same relationship starting to take place with my son.
Yeah. And
And so
what
that's where I guess like I started to rationalize that things need to really change.
and what does your son mean to you now?
Everything.
Mm.
He saved my life twice already. Right. So
Yeah.
first, before he was born, he is the reason that I got away from the meth at a subconscious level. That was why I made that decision to leave his mum, because otherwise I knew that I'd never get away from it. Like it's a hard thing because her whole family's still tied up in that, you know,
Mm.
which makes things really hard. So all I can do is be the best father that I possibly can be.
Yeah.
And then the second time, I had a skydiving accident on my 6th jump, learning how to skydive. And I went to reach for my hacky, which is like the ripcord that you pull to throw like this thing called your pilot chute out. Your pilot chute's like a smaller parachute. that fills up with air, then pulls the big parachute out of the bag, right? It's like a staging system. And I went to reach for it, couldn't find it. So I started panicking and swimming in the air. And I went to reach for it again, started panicking, swimming in the air, ended up upside down, falling towards the earth like a dead cockroach, right? And so just imagine that, right? When you're falling flat on your stomach, you're going about 200 kilometers an hour at terminal velocity, right? If you're like this, or if you're like upside down, or if you're in like a small ball like I was, you're falling way faster than that. And so you got this thing called your AAD that goes off at about, I thought it was 2,000 feet, right? It goes off at 750. So you fall about 5 feet, 1,000 feet every 5 seconds. So at 750 feet, that's about 3 or 4 seconds from hitting the ground at full impact, right?
Yeah.
And I was waiting for this thing to go off, and I started freaking out. I'm like, this thing's not going to go. I'm going to end up going in. Going in's when you have an accident skydiving, right? And I thought to myself, it was on a Thursday. I said, if I don't grab this hacky and find it, and by the way, you've got an emergency on the front. You've got an emergency parachute. I did not think about that whatsoever, right? I could have just pulled that. I would have been sweet.
Just flight or fight kicked in.
Bro, it was hectic. I went to freeze, if anything.
Yeah,
There was no
shock.
fighting or flighting, bro. I was falling, not flying, and I was fucking freeze. I was like
Yeah.
fully frozen. Anyways, then I freaked out. And once again, I had this moment of this like clarity after like almost blacking out. You know how they say like when you have a near-death experience, like everything sort of slows down and you start getting that flashback all through your life. It was like that. I had this Rolodex of all these different memories that I would have remembered. I was like, this is it. I literally just surrendered at this point. And then this thought of my son popped into my head. And I was like, if I don't pull this hacky, the ripcord, there's a chance I won't ever see my son again. And so I rolled on my stomach real quick, found the thing real quick, pulled it. And when I opened it, I was at 1,700 feet. So at full speed, that's about 7 seconds from hitting the ground.
Fuck.
So to say that he saved my life twice it couldn't be truer. And what does he mean to me now? He means absolutely everything. Everything that I do now is for him, because I see what it would have been like for him to grow up without me as a father. And so even with me working with men, it's like in hope that we can create better fathers, partners, and obviously businessmen to create a better world. Because at the end of the day, there's so many broken men out there that have kids that are, disconnected, that are, they're not being present with their kids, and they wonder why the youth crime rate's so high. It's through things like this, right? Fathers or, shit male role models that are in these young men's lives.
Definitely. Do you think that's also another big reason why you're starting the Interchange Project charity? One, because of your own lived experience through what you've been through, but two, also your son's going to be growing up in this next generation that's coming up, and you can kind of create a culture of men doing things that are good rather than going down that certain path that you went down.
Exactly why we're doing it. So I had this vision for a very long time. I didn't know what it looked like, but I wanted to work with young men, because my thought is that one day my son's going to be, that age 15 years old where I was, where I had that fork in the road and I chose the other way, right? And to be able to create something where these young men obviously have opportunity and have support and have good male role models and people they can actually lean on, where they feel safe to go. That was my vision. And so I actually was on a road trip last year, and like this whole Interchange Project thing, we'll talk more about that in a sec, but like this whole Interchange Project thing started off as like me wanting to actually go into schools and do seminars with kids, right? To work with young men.
Yeah.
To sort of get them before they fall through the cracks. Because with what I do now, like with interchange coaching, I work with men aged 25 to 45. And obviously that's a rough time, right? It's not necessarily exactly that. Like, so I have younger men, I have older men. It just, obviously that's like the demographic I want to work with. And so with these men, I'm getting them after they've already had these issues come up in their life. They've already gone through the adolescence where they went off the track, or they didn't get their needs met, or they've got the trauma that's obviously created that problem. So I started thinking, what if instead of intervening, we could prevent? How powerful would that be? Being able to take these kids that are struggling and haven't got good male role models and haven't got good people around them, have them come with us and provide them with the support, the love, the care that they need, right? Because it started off as me wanting to go into schools, and I was like, no, that doesn't feel right. There's something about that. There's resistance to me doing that. And then we spoke about wanting to because every year for the last couple of years, me and a heap of the boys have done like these events, right? Like last year we did this 24-hour paddle to help raise money for a group here on the Gold Coast called Mob. Have you heard of Mob?
No, I haven't heard of the mob, no.
So they work with young men, 15, 16-year-olds that have been kicked out of every other school and they've got nowhere else to go. And they help them to pretty much do exactly what I want to do, but in the schooling environment, right? And so they have their own academy set up. And they started out as, Marco, who's the founder, doing some amazing work, by the way. Marco, the founder, sitting under a tree with like 5 or 6 lads and coaching them and having these little mentoring sessions to now where they're at. They've got 2 campuses in Southport and they've got 200 kids that they work with. And it's actually like a fully integrated year 12, year 11 certificate sort of system they have where they take them through their own journey.
Well, it's so
almost like a Steiner school. And so I started thinking like, how can we do something like that? The year before that, we did a marathon for Living. We raised money for Living. But the thing that we saw is like with charities, like a lot of the time we're raising this money. So let's say if like $5,000 goes to Living, how much of that actually goes to the people?
hassle like the admin fees and all the other stuff.
Yeah, you got all the admin fees. And obviously everyone has to get paid because these people are working, right? But me and the boys had this crazy idea that we wanted to do our own 24-hour challenge rather than doing something for someone else. And we wanted to raise money. And that money we wanted to use then to support these young men. Whereas like these young men that haven't got these opportunities, they haven't got good male role models, they haven't got the support, they haven't got the mentorship, they haven't got the things or the environment around them that they need. We're going to use this $100,000 to help a couple of kids and we're going to build on that every year. And then this went from just becoming this like little event that me and the boys were going to do to now becoming something called the Interchange Change for Good Challenge, right? Which is under the umbrella of the Interchange Project, which is a charity that we're in the process of founding. And the charity, we have a mission at the Interchange Project to change the lives of a lot of young men and to reduce the rate of youth crime by 50% in the next 10 years. Especially with everything that you see in Southeast Queensland, the way that I guess the news portray these young men, like the youth crime is out of control. But whereas the news portrays these young men as being young thugs that are out stealing cars and taking drugs, that's all they see, right? That's all they see is these young kids that are, misbehaving. Like what we see are these young men who have been sexually abused, mentally abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, and feel safer on the street or in jail than they do in their own home. And if you let that sink in for a second, like the reality of that is it's sad that there's so many young lost boys, not men, boys, lads out there that feel safer on the street or safer in jail than they do in their own family household because of the chaoticness or the lack of support, lack of nurturing, lack of good role models that they have in their own family home. And so that's where that came from, bro. It was like, it started off as this mission of wanting to support these young men in some way to now creating this mentorship that we're going to be working with these young men to help to reduce the rate of youth crime because, it's a big, audacious goal. But by bringing the community together and bringing awareness and shining a light on the fact that these kids are still our kids. They're still young men, which means they're still malleable. So throwing them away, putting them in jail for long periods of time like everyone wants to do is not the answer. Because I think about me going to jail, right? I went to jail. I learned how to do crime. I learned how to sell drugs. I learned how to get my drugs cheaper. And I was surrounded by more criminals. I got taken out of the environment that created the problem, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might have been, put into an environment that nurtured the problem and taken out of the environment back into the same environment that created the first problem. And they expected someone to change. Like, how does that work? This broken model does not work. We've known that for a very long time. The prison system doesn't work. It's all about keeping bums in seats. For one kid that's in the juvenile justice system, the government gets about 120 grand, right? So the prisons create jobs. And so it's all a money-making scheme. Taxpayers' dollars go into these, right? And they obviously keep the system flowing. It's the same with the adult prisons. People are getting up, like myself, for instance, for a disqualified driving charge. I'm not out there hurting anyone. And I'm going into a prison where there's 2 to 3 people sleeping on the floor in a single man cell. You can't tell me that the problem's getting any better.
Yeah.
The system's obviously not working.
And like you said as well, when people say the whole youth crime is going crazy and it's going wild, but it's like the thing that's crazy is the lack of support, care, and nurturing for people, especially these young people, like the lack of support out there, or if there is support, the lack of the resources they get to.
That's it, bro. It's a lack of resources. There's not a lack of wanting to make the changes for these kids, but there's just a lack of resources.
Yeah.
And it's really sad because, if the government channeled more money into these sorts of projects, I feel like we could really make a big difference.
Yeah, because there is
But
a lot of people
unfortunately,
out there that are passionate and want to make a change, but even you know the whole process of starting a charity so you can raise money is a fucking headache within itself.
not wrong, bro. Jumping through heaps, all that sort of stuff. It's a process, man. Like if you wanted to start a business, you get your ABN in like a day. We're still waiting for our ABN coming through for this non-for-profit. Plus, then we've got the non-for-profit status and the DGR, which is going to actually allow us to take donations. But this is the thing, right? Like a lot of people have fucked the whole charity. For us, the Interchange project, we're going to be very different. We want to put other charities on notice. And one thing we're going to do is be very transparent about where every dollar goes. And so every year as a non-for-profit, we actually have to be audited by the ATO to show where the money's going, right? And so every year we're actually going to make that the ATO audit live. So anyone that's putting money into the charity can see where every dollar goes. Because I get it. Obviously, we're going to have to pay employees and things like that. But when you've got like a CEO or a chairman of the board driving a $300,000 Mercedes that was probably bought by the charity,
Yeah.
this is where the fucking problem is.
Mm.
And so
100%.
like that's the point of difference for us. And obviously with that, I do believe that we can start to reinstall some faith in these kind of community projects that we have going on to create these changes for these young men. Because like I said, we can't do it alone.
Yeah.
We can't do it
100%.
alone. But with the support and obviously with these things that we're going to start to do, for instance, the charity, the event, the Change for Good challenge, we can start to bring awareness towards it and get everyone involved on a deeper level, right?
Yeah. And especially with the challenge and also the charity as well. It's a great point of like people to go to be able to contribute to making the change as well, because some of the people who are just in the community who live around these communities and they see the youth crime and they're like, I don't even know how to handle or what to do.
Yep.
At least they know there is a service out there that they can contribute to, so they feel like they are contributing to the community as well. So it gives them a sense of power and they are making the change as well.
Yep. That's the thing, right? Like everyone sits there and talks about wanting change, but so many people are too scared to get their hands dirty. And so this is why the Change for Good challenge it came to life, right? It's not just about creating change for good in these kids' lives. There's a double meaning right there. It's like change, like your change, your 10 cents, your 20 cents, your $5, your $10 all goes towards supporting these young men to create opportunities they wouldn't have had previously. And so like to run through a bit of what the challenge is exciting as shit. Like me and the boys sitting down there were like twiddling our thumbs, just thinking like this is going to be hectic, right? And so it's a 24-hour endurance event, like nothing that's ever been done before. So it's a 4-hour run. So this, I should say, actually, this event's been broken down into five smaller events. Okay, so it's a 4-hour run, a 4-hour downhill mountain biking session, a 4-hour gym workout, a 4-hour pack march on Karama Beach, and then a 4-hour open water kayaking session. And so with that, we wanted to originally we wanted this to be like just me and the boys doing it, but then we're like, for the gravity of what we're doing, let's get people involved. Let's create like a massive event. We wanted to make this like Spartan race type style, right? And so you can sign up for the event. Anyone from the public can sign up, no matter where they are, what they do, and you don't have to do the whole thing. Yeah. Not even better, you don't even have to do it by yourself. So you can sign up as an individual and do one event, 2 events, or pay a price point and get access to unlimited events. Or you can sign up as a team of 4 and do the same thing. So you could be out there battling with your mates and knowing that you're actually making a difference. And obviously with this event, the gravity and the traction that we're going to get will help to then shine a light on this issue and bring some change about. So the Change for Good is exactly that. We're creating change for good in these young men's lives and changing for good the way that us as a community deal with these things.
Absolutely love that, brother. It's an opportunity for everyone to come together, get on board and contribute to the one great thing. And for the people listening as well that want to sign up or find out more info about the event and the challenge, like where's the best place to go to for that?
www.interchange.org.
And I'll be in the bio.
everything is there. So I guess the cool thing about the event as well, like those events that we have, the smaller events, they're not just random events. Each one of them represents something that these young men go through. There's so much messaging behind what we're doing, right? So the 24 hours itself, it's 24 hours of emotional, physical, and mental strain. But it's nothing compared to what a lot of these kids go through on a daily basis, just living the lives they live on the street and obviously in the household they live in. So 24 hours, what's that? It's a chance to experience what these kids go through, because the 4-hour run represents the fact that these kids are running away from something. They're on the street. They're in jail because they're running away from the catastrophic environment they were in. The downhill mountain biking, right, is like obviously these kids are on a downward trend. And for them to actually become someone that they're proud of, it's always going to be an uphill battle, especially with the judgment that we face as being criminals or being people that have been in the system, right? Because of the way that the greater public or the greater community see us, which is what we're trying to shift. The gym workout is the fact that these young men have to find that inner strength just to survive in the life they live every day. Then we've got the pack march, which represents strength in numbers. So a lot of these kids feel like they have to isolate themselves. But when they are able to be around the right community and be around the right role models, they can become stronger than they ever thought. And the last one, which is probably one of the most important, is the fact that every single one of these men, like they've got their own story. These young men have their own story and we don't understand who they are. So who are we to judge them? So it's the feeling of, not everyone's in the same boat. So before you go and start to judge someone without knowing their story, take a second to actually listen to it and have some compassion and empathy to understand that, even though you might not be able to see why these kids are doing it, there's a reason for it.
I think people start to detach the fact that they're human as well. You know what I mean? Like we've all made mistakes, we've all done things we regret, we've all been in situations where we know we could have done better. At the end of the day, we're all humans just trying to do the best we can with the information that we have.
Yeah, and we're not trying to validate or excuse or justify the behavior. All we're trying to do with this, I guess you'd be saying exactly the same, is like all we're trying to do with this is shift the perspective. I heard Cooper Chapman say this on his podcast the other day, and it really resonated with me. It's like, how about getting curious instead of furious?
I love that.
It's like, why? Like, ask the questions like, why are they here? Why is this happening? What is actually happening for them in their world? Because what 13-year-old or 12-year-old kid would rather be on the street than at home in their bed, in a nice warm bed?
Exactly.
Really, like, it's like it comes down to being a product of the environment.
Yeah. And I understand people as well, like their initial reaction would be to get angry or frustrated or whatever it is around seeing these things. But then once you overcome that initial reaction, start to think about the curious side of the things as well. Like, why is it happening? How can I contribute? Is there a little something here and there I can do? And just maybe have a bit of understanding.
100%, brother. 100%.
Yeah. Before we get into our community Q&A, brother, because we got a couple of questions come through. Is there anything else you want to touch on here before we get into it?
No, I think I'm pretty good, bro. I'm pretty good. Like, all I want to say is, I guess, and if I can leave everyone with this, is just that, like, everyone's got a story. Every single person has a story. And so, like, for me, something that I've been really intentional about as of late is just taking the time to sit down and have a conversation with someone. Because you don't know how much of a difference just having a conversation with someone and asking about their day could make. Like you see a homeless guy, buy him some food and go sit with him and ask him his story. Rather than judging him and saying, scum of the earth or junkie or whatever it might be, ask him his story. When you see these kids out there running amok, be like, "Yeah, what are you doing out here? Like, can we support in any way? Is there anything you need?" Look for a way to contribute in a positive manner rather than, I guess, being the first one to point a finger.
I love that, brother, because I've got a little story around that I'll share quickly before we get into our community Q&A. But for my Bucks party for my wedding, I went down to Melbourne, and outside the casino, I saw a homeless guy sitting outside, and he was asking for money for food. So I gave him some money, and I took him to the shop and just bought him like Gatorades and food and all that type of stuff. And I was speaking to him about his life and what he's been through and what his aspirations are. And he's like, my biggest goal in life is to get off the streets and help people who are homeless and help them get off the streets. And just like having that little conversation with him and just being able to sit down with someone and getting to know them, it just shows like, you can't really stereotype people just because what you see in face value. Once you start getting to know people, everyone's got a story, everyone's got ambitions, but we're all just stuck in the places sometimes.
I love that, bro. I love that.
But for everyone listening, One Talk is a community segment where we get questions come through from rather my listeners or people who follow Ben and his work. But the first question we had to come through was, how have you learned to say no to things?
Pardon, what was that? Can you repeat the question?
How have you learned to say no?
Just by practicing it. Just by practicing it, right? So saying no is comes with discipline, but also comes back to your self-worth and boundaries. So the way that you learn it, and like I guess if we look for a bit more context here, is this around drugs or is this around just saying no in general? If it's just around saying no in general, it just comes down to practicing it in low stakes environments, right? So I have something that I do with all my clients. Okay, I get all my clients to do this, especially if they're people pleasing. I have people pleasing tendencies. And I say to them, this is going to be so uncomfortable, but practice this. When someone asks you to do anything, even if you want to do it, say no first. Just say no. And what you'll find is a bit of resistance, but say no. And then if it's actually something you want to do, and they're like, oh, really? You'd be like, nah, I'm just kidding. I'll do it for you. But practice saying no, because we get stuck in such a pattern of saying yes to everything, to people pleasing, to keeping everyone else happy, that we forget about ourselves. So that's the, I guess, first part if it just comes to saying no in general. But when it comes to like drugs and alcohol and all that sort of stuff, if it comes to like, I guess, something that there's an addiction around, well, I guess the easiest way to start saying no is change your environment. Okay, remove yourself from the situation. The other, I guess, thing to look at as well is like why? Why is it you want to say no? Like find the purpose behind it, set a goal around it, make it important enough to you that it's more important to say no than it is to say yes. And I guess for me, that was a big thing. It's like I knew if I continued to say yes to the partying, if I continued to say yes to the drugs, if I continued to say yes to having a bag or a line, then that meant that I was going to continue to be living subpar to my full potential and being a shit dad and struggling with business and being broke and living week to week and all that sort of stuff. So I really examined the pain point and then got really clear on what I wanted. So that's how I started to practice saying no around that side of things. But once again, it's just a learned behavior, right? Being able to say no. Is there anything you want to add on to that, Ryan?
No, I absolutely agree. Like you said, it's just a repetition of actually just putting it into practice and doing it. And also the second part, like you said, with getting curious and understanding the purpose behind why you want to say no. Because if you're constantly people pleasing everyone and constantly saying yes, you're going to get yourself in environments and situations you don't want to be in. And then you start asking yourself, am I living by my own goals in life, my own values in life, or am I living up to someone else's standards? And if you're constantly living up to other people's standards, you're constantly going to put yourself to the side. If you keep doing that, you're gonna end up losing yourself, and we all know where that path can go. So
Well,
understand your
that's it.
why.
That's exactly right. Like that's the like I guess the surefire way to abandon yourself is to do exactly that. When you're saying yes to other people and saying no to yourself, you're diminishing your self-worth. You're telling yourself at a subconscious level that you are not important and other people are more important to you, which then leads back to that, I guess, the key to all dysfunctional human behavior, which is a lack of self-worth.
100%. Our next question is biggest challenge with becoming clean, and how did you overcome it?
Biggest challenge becoming clean or getting clean?
Getting clean.
Getting clean. Uh, ooh. Okay. Biggest challenge with getting clean was the loneliness. For me to get clean, especially off the ice, I had to walk away from everything and anyone that I'd known for the last 6 to 8 years. Every single person. I didn't have one person in my life that I didn't communicate with, that I communicated with, who wasn't an ice addict, wasn't someone that I sold drugs to, wasn't someone that did any of that stuff. And so it was honestly the hardest part was being lonely. I had to sit with myself and sit in that discomfort and experience myself. It was the first time that I really took the mask off, put the mask down, and I had to hold a mirror to myself and go, hey, this is me. And I fucking hated who I saw, which is once again why I then started to distract with drugs and alcohol and women.
Yeah.
So then the second hardest part was getting off the drugs and the alcohol and getting away from womanizing. And it was exactly the same. I had to focus on being alone. So the hardest part for me, I guess, and this is going to be the hardest part for most people, is actually having to sit with yourself and get really, really comfortable with your own company. And in turn, learning who I was.
Yeah. I love that. Similar with me as well. Now, we had an addiction counselor come on the podcast, and he was talking about when you first get clean and you are lonely, it's not about finding peace, it's about mastering chaos. Because at the start, there's a lot of chaos you got to
Wow.
master first.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's a really good point. We spent so long avoiding that, right? We spent so long avoiding the chaos going on in our own head.
Yeah, definitely. Our next question is, what are you most proud of?
Myself for overcoming the things that I overcome and for being able to step up as a father. And I guess the other thing I'm most proud of is now the community that I've built. I've got over 100 men Australia-wide that I've now helped to overcome their self-sabotaging behaviors and improve their health, their wealth, their professional life, and their relationships through the New Age Man community. And being able to now sit and watch that grow and continue to grow and always run itself is just this. Every day I'm jumping into the group. I've got it open next to me here on the screen. Every day I've got the group chat just blowing up, and the boys are all thriving. And I'm talking like I've got guys here that are, you know, been alcoholics for 10, 15 years, you know, that are completely stone cold sober. And, you know, I've got guys that were snorting 2 or 3 ounces of coke a week, spending 150K on horses a fucking month on fucking gambling, being completely clean and sober, completely turning their lives around and thriving. And if I hadn't have found that self-worth within myself, there is no chance that I'd be able to do what I'm doing and holding space for these men. So I'm proud of myself for being able to go through that journey and come out the other side to now be able to use that to help so many men. Because I know that this is not just changing their lives, but the ripple effect.
Yeah.
Same with the kids that we want to work with. It doesn't just affect them, right? It affects everyone around them. And same with these men, like getting messages every now and then. I love these messages from like their partners, their friends, their family going, "You are doing amazing work." And I can't believe how quick Johnny or X, Y, and Z has changed. Like getting these messages and knowing that it's not just affecting them, but affecting their kids, their partners, their businesses, and every other aspect of their life and everyone around them. It's just like, that's what I'm proud of.
Because like you said, the ripple effect it has, it can be the initial people around them, or it could even be the next generation that they grow up
Exactly.
as well.
Exactly, brother.
The last question, bro, it's one from myself, and I ask everyone. I like to know everyone's own definition of this. So, how do you define success?
Mm. I love this question. Okay, so I'd define success as getting to the end of your life, being happy with everything that you've achieved, everything that you've done. And that doesn't look like finances, that doesn't look like material things or anything like that, but the experiences, knowing that you made the most out of life, because even if we only get this one life, knowing that you lived it to the absolute fullest, didn't leave one stone unturned, didn't run away from things that scared you, but leant the fuck into those things. That's what I'd see as success. Knowing that there was not one thing in your life that you didn't at least try once and didn't do. So that when you're sitting there on your deathbed, you can say, I feel fulfilled. I feel complete. I feel whole. That's what I'd say success is.
I love that, brother. Absolutely love it. But I just want to say thank you for coming on the show today. I was super excited before we got into it, and now we finished it. It definitely met my expectations even more.
I love that, bro. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that we got to do this, man. It's been really cool. Thank you so much for having me on, Ryan. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast and everything. Wow, English, and also everything that you're doing. It's really cool that you've got this platform where you're obviously sharing stories, because just like obviously me coming on and obviously the people that you get on these podcasts, it's real life shit,
Yeah.
right? It's real raw stories that can actually inspire hope in everyone.
100%. There's an opportunity for people just to connect and maybe relate and maybe find something that you've done and may be able to help them. There's so many different things that can come from just having this conversation.
Yeah,
So
bro.
cheers to that, bro. I appreciate it of your time as well. Also, if you're listening, every link for the interchange, the event that's coming up, the challenge, also socials will all be in the bio of this episode. So please jump into it. Once again, cheers, bro.
Thank you, brother.